Imagine this. A leader stands thousands of miles away from home on the very soil of a global superpower and chooses that moment not in their own parliament, not in a regional summit, but right there to issue a nuclear threat. That is not just a statement. That is a calculated performance on the world's biggest stage. Because here's the truth. When you speak from your own country, the world sees it as your domestic narrative. But when you speak from the United States, the center of global political gravity, your words echo in every corridor of power, every stock market, every newsroom. It's not just about who hears it, but where they hear it from. And in that moment, the geographical location becomes part of the weapon. Think about why people choose certain venues to make announcements. Athletes break records in front of the biggest crowds. Tech leaders unveil products in front of the press in New York or San Francisco, not in a small town auditorium. Politicians sign treaties in Geneva or Washington because symbolism matters. The place becomes part of the message. That's exactly what's happening here. The soil of America is not just a backdrop, it's part of the script. It says, we're not whispering in a corner, we're speaking in the middle of the global stage, and we want everyone to hear us. From a strategic point of view, this changes the dynamics completely. A nuclear threat made at home can be interpreted as posturing for a local audience, maybe to gain political capital or boost morale. But a nuclear threat made from US soil carries an unspoken layer. I can challenge my rival while standing inside the territory of your most influential ally. It's a way of testing not just India's nerves, but also America's stance. Will the US dismiss it? Will they condemn it? Or will they try to quietly manage the fallout? That uncertainty is exactly what keeps the global audience watching. And here's where the brilliance or the recklessness comes in. By making such a statement far from home, you drag more players into the conversation. It's no longer just India and Pakistan. Now, Washington's ears are burning. Beijing is watching closely. Moscow is calculating its next move. The United Nations is suddenly under pressure to respond. It's the kind of move that forces the hand of nations that might otherwise have stayed silent. But there's also a layer of theater here. In international politics, power is often projected, not just exercised. This wasn't tanks rolling across a border or submarines surfacing in contested waters. This was a sentence crafted to travel faster than any missile. It's about image, influence, and narrative, and the location is a key part of that narrative. Standing on US soil and issuing such a challenge is like planting a flag in the middle of your rival's chessboard. It doesn't win the game instantly, but it disrupts every calculation. For India, this move is not just about assessing the credibility of the threat. It's about decoding the intention behind the location. Is it meant to intimidate, to provoke a public response, or is it a diplomatic dare to both India and America at once? Whatever the motive, the fact remains. When a leader chooses the world's most watched stage to make their boldest statement, they're not just speaking to their enemy, they're speaking to history. And history always remembers the place where the first shot was fired, even if it's just made of words. Timing is everything, in politics, in business, in war. Sometimes the when is just as important as the what. A nuclear threat is not a casual remark you drop into conversation. It is a deliberate tool, sharpened by the moment in which it's used. And here's the thing, the moment chosen here was not random, it was engineered. Issuing such a statement from US soil at a specific time is like striking a drum when the whole orchestra has gone quiet. It cuts through every other sound. The global news cycle is a crowded arena. Every hour, headlines flash by, market crashes, climate disasters, celebrity scandals, new technology breakthroughs. If you make your move at the wrong moment, your message drowns in the noise, but pick the right moment, and suddenly the entire world is leaning in. Political timing is about reading the emotional temperature of the moment, when tensions are already high, when a rival is distracted, when the media spotlight is at its brightest. That's when your words don't just get heard, they get remembered. The timing here may have been designed to ride the crest of multiple waves. Maybe it was close to a critical diplomatic meeting. Maybe tensions in the region were already building. Maybe the audience in Washington was particularly sensitive to security talk that week. Whatever the exact reason, the effect is clear. The statement didn't just echo, it ricocheted. From TV panels in Delhi to defense rooms in Pentagon, from embassy briefings to social media hashtags, the timing ensured that the threat became the day's unavoidable conversation. In diplomacy, timing can also serve as pressure. If you announce a bold move right before your opponent is due to make a big speech, you force them to respond or risk looking weak. If you drop your words just before an important vote or trade negotiation, you tilt the balance. This is political chess, and in chess, it's not enough to move the right piece, you have to move it at the right time when your opponent's focus is split. There's another layer, the psychological impact on the listener. A sudden, bold statement delivered when no one expects it creates shock. That shock turns into urgency. That urgency forces quick decisions, and quick decisions in politics often lead to mistakes. Timing, therefore, can be used as a weapon, slowing your enemy when you want them stuck, or speeding them up when you want them to stumble. In this case, the timing from US soil could have been calculated to catch India mid-step before it could fully align its diplomatic or military stance. And don't forget the international audience. Countries aren't just talking to each other, they're performing for the world. The timing of a threat can be aimed as much at the onlookers as at the target. By making the statement in a moment when the world's eyes were already on Washington, the speaker ensured that even neutral countries would see the drama unfold live. That visibility can sway alliances, open back-channel negotiations, or sow seeds of doubt in rival camps. So while the content of the message may seem like the biggest headline, its timing is the invisible hand guiding how it's received. It's the difference between a stone dropped in still water and one thrown into a storm. The ripples travel differently. And in geopolitics, the ripples are often more dangerous than the splash. This is why leaders who understand the rhythm of events can turn even a single sentence into a global tremor, because they know that the moment you choose to speak can be the moment you win half the battle without firing a single shot. When a statement of this magnitude is made, especially from such a symbolic location, it doesn't stay trapped in the narrow borders of the original dispute. It spills outward, rippling through the global order. This is the nature of modern geopolitics. Nothing happens in isolation. A nuclear threat between two neighbors isn't just a headline in South Asia. It's a warning bell for every capital city with a stake in stability, trade, and security. That's the global ripple effect, one bold sentence sending shockwaves across continents. First, the obvious layer, the countries directly tied to the speaker and the target immediately enter a state of heightened alert. India's defense apparatus will begin recalculating readiness levels. Pakistan's allies will watch to see how serious the threat is. The United States, as the host nation, faces awkward questions about whether it allowed its soil to become a platform for dangerous rhetoric. Already, just in these first ripples, we have three powerful actors entangled in the same emotional current. But then the waves spread further. China, with its vested interest in Pakistan and its delicate balancing act with India, starts recalibrating. Russia, always watching for ways to exploit divisions in the West, evaluates whether the rising tension can be turned to its advantage. Europe, concerned with nuclear non-proliferation and global trade stability, begins drafting statements and contingency plans. Even regions far from South Asia, like Africa or Latin America, feel the economic vibrations. Markets dip, commodity prices fluctuate, and shipping insurance rates creep upward. And here's the thing about these ripples. They carry not just the words themselves, but the mood behind them. Investors sense instability, pulling capital from riskier markets. Diplomats begin whispering in back channels, preparing their governments for shifts in alliances. Intelligence agencies task analysts with figuring out whether this was an impulsive remark or a prelude to a real escalation. The uncertainty becomes as powerful as the threat itself. This is where the psychological dimension of the ripple effect takes over. When nations far removed from the immediate dispute begin to alter their own behavior, rerouting trade, strengthening military exercises, or issuing travel advisories, it's no longer just about India. In Pakistan, it's about the world adapting to a perceived change in the rules of the game, and perception often moves faster than fact. There's also a media ripple. News networks from Washington to London to Tokyo start running the story, each with its own framing, each feeding different audiences. Social media explodes with interpretations, memes, outrage, and fear. In ours, the story isn't just in diplomatic circles. It's in living rooms, classrooms, and boardrooms. And the more people discuss it, the more pressure builds on governments to respond. Leaders who might have preferred to stay silent are forced into public comment, lest they seem disengaged. And finally, the ripple effect creates opportunities for other players. Smaller nations can step forward as mediators, earning international prestige. Humanitarian organizations can call for de-escalation, drawing attention to their causes. Rival powers can exploit the distraction to advance their own agendas in completely different regions. The original statement becomes the opening move in a much larger, multi-layered game. That's why in geopolitics, no leader makes a provocative statement without knowing it will trigger these ripples. They may not be able to control where all the waves go, but they understand that once the first one hits, the entire pond is in motion. And when the pond is the world, one drop of calculated danger can set every shore trembling. India now stands at a crossroads where every path carries a cost, and every decision will be judged not just by its own citizens, but by the world. A nuclear threat, especially one issued from the soil of the United States, is not something that can be brushed aside as political noise. The stakes are too high, the audience too large, and the consequences too unpredictable. This is India's strategic dilemma: how to respond in a way that deters aggression without plunging into the very crisis the threat was designed to provoke. The first option is the path of measured restraint. India could downplay the statement publicly, dismissing it as rhetoric meant for political theater. This would avoid giving the threat more oxygen and prevent escalating the situation. But the danger with this approach is perception. would restraint be seen as wisdom or as weakness? In geopolitics, silence can sometimes be interpreted as hesitation, and hesitation can invite further provocation. The second option is strong diplomatic retaliation. India could use global platforms like the United Nations or the G20 to frame the statement as an unacceptable breach of nuclear responsibility. This would rally international opinion, put pressure on Pakistan's allies, and force the US to clarify its own position, given that the statement was made on its soil. Yet here, too, lies a risk. Excessive public condemnation can corner the other side, making them feel they must double down to save face. The third option is strategic signaling, subtle but unmistakable moves to show readiness without outright escalation. This could include visible military exercises, rapid modernization announcements, or publicizing missile test schedules. These actions send a clear message. India is alert, prepared, and unwilling to be intimidated. The beauty of this approach is that it speaks volumes without firing a shot. The danger, however, is that in a tense environment, even signaling can be misread as preparation for conflict, potentially triggering the very chain reaction both sides wish to avoid. There's also the covert dimension, using intelligence and cyber capabilities to quietly neutralize potential threats or disrupt hostile planning without public confrontation. This path allows India to act without escalating rhetoric, but it requires precision, secrecy, and the willingness to accept that the public may never know what was done to keep them safe. And then comes the hardest choice of all, direct escalation. India could respond in kind, matching the threat with a public show of nuclear readiness, moving assets, or making counterstatements. This would satisfy domestic calls for strength and could deter immediate aggression, but it also dramatically increases the chance of miscalculation, where a single misunderstood move sparks a crisis that no one can control. The dilemma is magnified by the fact that this threat wasn't delivered in a vacuum. It was issued on US soil with global eyes already watching. India's response, whatever it is, will not just be judged by its effectiveness in the moment, but by how it shapes India's image as a responsible power. Overreact, and you risk being blamed for escalation. Underreact, and you risk inviting future challenges. In such moments, the greatest test for any nation is the ability to think beyond the immediate firestorm. India must ask, is this a trap to lure us into a reaction that benefits the other side? Or is this an opportunity to show the world that we can stand firm without stumbling into the abyss? In this balancing act, strength is not only about how loud you speak, it's about how clearly you think when the whole world is listening. Power is rarely just about weapons, armies, or technology. It's about perception. In geopolitics, the way you project power can often matter as much as the actual strength you possess. A public nuclear threat is not only a statement of capability, it's a carefully chosen performance designed to shape how others see you. It's a move on the psychological battlefield, where influence, intimidation, and image are the real weapons. When a leader issues such a threat openly, they're not necessarily planning to carry it out tomorrow. They're sending signals on multiple levels. To their own citizens, it can be a show of defiance and strength, a way of saying, we are not afraid, we will stand up to anyone. That boosts national pride and consolidates political support at home. To their opponent, it's an attempt to plant doubt about intentions, about how far they're willing to go, about whether this is the beginning of a dangerous escalation. And to the global audience, it's a reminder that they are a player who cannot be ignored. This is the psychology of power, shaping the narrative so that even without taking action, you make others adjust their behavior. If you can make your rival increase their defense spending, delay their plans, or divert their diplomatic focus without firing a single shot, you've already won a kind of silent victory. The public nature of a nuclear threat magnifies that effect because it forces the target to respond under the pressure of global scrutiny. The location and timing of this threat add another layer to the psychology. Standing on U.S. soil and making such a statement signals boldness. It's a way of saying, I can challenge my enemy from the heart of the most powerful nation on earth, and nothing will stop me. This plays not just to the rival's perception, but to the speaker's domestic base, creating the image of a fearless leader who speaks truth to power, no matter where they are. In politics, that kind of image can be as valuable as actual strategic gains, but there's a risk embedded in this kind of psychological warfare. Bluffing, even with nuclear rhetoric, can backfire. If your opponent calls your bluff or responds with equal aggression, you can be pushed into a corner where you must either escalate, risking real conflict, or back down and lose face. That's why these public threats are often calibrated to walk a fine line, strong enough to create unease, but ambiguous enough to leave room for retreat. Another key aspect is audience manipulation. Every statement like this is aimed at multiple audiences with different emotional triggers. For rivals, the aim is fear or hesitation. For allies, it's reassurance of strength. For the neutral world, it's a demonstration of relevance and influence. The challenge for the speaker is to craft the threat so it resonates differently with each group, yet still sounds coherent and intentional. In the end, the psychology of power in public threats is about controlling the mental space of the other side. It's about making them see you not just as you are, but as you want them to believe you are, unpredictable, capable, and willing to cross lines. And sometimes in geopolitics, getting inside your opponent's head is more decisive than getting inside their borders. That's why such threats, while dangerous, remain a favored tool for leaders who understand that wars are often won long before the first shot is fired, one in the mind, in the story, and in the way the world perceives who holds the upper hand. Step back from the immediate drama for a moment and look at the board as a whole. This isn't just about one statement, one leader, or even the long, tense history between India and Pakistan. It's part of a far bigger game, one where the pieces aren't just tanks and missiles, but alliances, trade routes, resource flows, and global influence. The nuclear threat made from U.S. soil is a move in that game, and to understand its true impact, you have to see where it fits in the larger geopolitical chessboard. At its core, the statement is a signal, not only to India but to every nation watching. It says, we are willing to raise the stakes, we are willing to disrupt the order, and we are willing to do it in a place where everyone will notice. That's not just a threat, it's an invitation to other players to rethink their strategies. It forces governments in distant capitals to reevaluate risk, recalculate partnerships, and reassess the stability of a region that is home to nearly a quarter of humanity. The bigger picture here includes the role of major powers. The United States, as the location where the statement was made, suddenly finds itself part of the narrative. Whether it likes it or not, Washington must decide how to respond. Does it condemn the words, ignore them, or use them as leverage in its own regional dealings? China sees an opportunity too. Tensions between India and Pakistan can draw India's focus away from other disputes, like those along the Himalayan border. Russia, with its own complex ties to both countries, might view this as a chance to step in as a broker or to deepen defense ties where it sees openings. But beyond the maneuvering of superpowers, there's the global system itself. In an era where nuclear non-proliferation is already under strain, such public threats challenge the idea that the world's most destructive weapons can be kept out of political theater. If more leaders see this kind of rhetoric as a useful tool, the norm against nuclear saber-rattling weakens. That's a dangerous shift, not just for South Asia, but for every region where rivalries simmer. There's also the economic layer to consider. South Asia is a key hub for global trade, technology, and human capital. Any sign of instability sends shockwaves through markets, affects shipping routes, and shakes investor confidence. Energy prices, supply chains, and even currency values can be influenced by the perception of looming conflict. The world economy is deeply interconnected, and a political tremor in one corner can unsettle balance sheets and stock exchanges thousands of miles away. And finally, there's the matter of precedent. Every high-profile geopolitical move becomes part of the unspoken playbook for future leaders. When a statement like this is made in such a high visibility setting, it sets an example whether for good or ill. Other leaders may study it, adapt it, and deploy it in their own contexts. In that sense, this one act could influence how crises are escalated, managed, or manipulated for years to come. The bigger picture reminds us that no single threat exists in isolation. It is woven into a vast tapestry of shifting interests, strategic gambits, and historical rivalries. The statement from U.S. soil is not the end of the story. It's a move that forces every other player to make new calculations. And in a world where perception can be as powerful as firepower, that recalibration may turn out to be the most lasting impact of all.